So I'm Toshiba, and thank you again for the shout out about the book. I am the author of this book, No Handouts for Black Girl. It's my 7th book. I also have a 6-book series called Sienna, and I have a talk and radio show called Not Your Typical Girl Talk that I do with 2 other girlfriends and my partner in crime.
And Robert Stevenson, jack of all trades. Right now, I'm mostly dabbling in the finance world, but I'm trying to spread my wings and take control of my destiny. That's probably the best way I can put it.
Yes, love that. I love the way that you cheer on Toshiba through her adventures as well, right? Like,
yeah, it's
there's
fun,
that ebb and flow.
It's fun, and I also know that some of her opinions are not popular, so I feel it's important to make sure that she knows, at least from my side, like I'm not just gonna, when people start getting mad at you for what you say, I'm not gonna try to get you to change what you said. I think usually, especially in this time that we're living in, when you're getting resistance to your ideas, that probably means you're on the right track, because it feels like society is trying to funnel everyone down the same path.
Yes.
And it's just a path of kind of like just monotonous robots, not questioning anything, not challenging anything, just go to work, go home, go to sleep, rinse, repeat. And I'm not a fan of that type of life.
The term that we use around here is there's a lack of critical thinking these days.
We've talked about that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? On every level, on every topic. Like, just fill in the blank. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could talk every topic, and just generally speaking, there's just a lack of critical thinking. Yeah, so it's just, yes, that can go in so many different directions. But there's something else that you said in there that is interesting, and Toshiba and I were talking before about that sense of defending the Black woman. And one of the conversations I've had earlier this week, I was in a group, like almost like a board meeting, and then we went off on this tangent, and then this conversation erupted about the sense that Black women are out here on the front lines, and they're saying things, and they're challenging ideals, and they're doing things, and the men are silent. Full stop. General statement like that. If I just throw that out to you like that, what's your first response to that, Rob?
You know what? I had to take a step back. That's not been my experience, and that is what I will say. And I think we have to be very careful when we generalize and say that Black men are not protecting Black women, because that has absolutely not been my experience. And in the same token, I think when you make statements like that, it's very difficult for Black men to come now to your defense, because you've already said to the world, they don't protect us, right? And I think we have to be very careful about the narrative that we're putting out about each other, because it's interesting, because Kevin Samuels, and I'm gonna throw him in there because I talk about him a lot in my talk show, has come on the scene, and he's exposed some very, very dark things about our community and the interaction between Black men and Black women, and Black women not even wanting to smile at Black men. And Rob said something on the talk show which is very interesting. The way Black men and men in general defend women and protect women has come into question, because there's this idea that we can do this all by ourselves, and therefore how men show protection and love and guidance, they're being questioned whether they should do that, right? Like, chivalry's dead. If it's dead, it's because women killed it, right? If a man is going to help you with your groceries these days, he has to question it. Rob enjoys driving, and every once in a while he'll jump into the car and do Uber. And he had an experience where he jumped out of the car to help a Black woman with her bags, and she kind of, no, I don't need you. And that's how he automatically reacts. He opens the doors, he helps with bags, and what he naturally does came under attack. So after that, he was very careful with how now he waited for someone to ask him, which is not his natural tendency. So you can't say you want Black men and men in general to protect you, but the way they do so no longer fits the narrative of feminism. That's my comment.
Yeah, I would agree wholly with that. I think the concept of, okay, I'm gonna just give an example of our life. It's easy for me to defend her because I'm not an accessory to her life. I'm at the center of it.
Yes.
So being at the center of her life, anything that comes at her is going to come at me because I'm right in the middle of her life.
Yes.
If I'm on the fringe, if I'm on the outside of it, if I'm on the edge of it, if everything is about her and I'm merely just along for the ride, that makes it inherently difficult to, because basically now I'm trying to throw myself into the center of her life, and I don't think it's supposed to be that.
Right, right. Yeah.
You know,
I
so
hear you.
so I think that position of we're not being protected, it's usually protection goes with vulnerability, right?
Yep.
So if you're incapable of being vulnerable, how can you legitimately expect protection? Because the guys feels like you don't need it.
Right. Yeah. Right. To see what you're saying about the feminism piece and that chivalry being dead, that just triggered two memories for me. One, when I was working at a big box gym and they have this thing called the 5-foot rule, right? So as you're walking towards someone, you make eye contact with them, you smile, you say hello. And like you should as a human being do that, but it's instituted as a policy, right? To just give people the extra warm feeling of being humans and connecting. So that's fine, and I'm all for that. So I'm wearing my uniform, I have my name badge on. Hi, how are you? Whatever, do a thing. I'm walking out of the building, so I have my coat on, so I no longer have my badge on, no longer have my appearance of my uniform on, and there's a Black woman coming towards me, walking up the stairs as I'm walking down the stairs to exit, and I smile to say hello, and the vibe and the what's projected back to me is you're trying to pick me up right now, and I'm not trying to have that. So I'm not saying this to knock Black women. I'm not to say that I never have said hi to another Black woman. I have, but I remember that sense of, because I'm not on duty and I'm not doing it because of the badge on this, because of my job, you think I'm trying to pick you up right now?
And like, how'd that make you feel though? Like
that made me mad. I mean, like that made me mad in the sense of, okay, so now, like, there's a chip on your shoulder, but like I'm only stepping to you because I'm trying to get your phone number right now. No, I'm trying to be a good human being, saying hello to everybody. And the person that, the grandmother I said hi to before, I wasn't trying to pick her up and get her phone number. So why do you think that I'm trying to do it to you? So that's the vibe that I got from that. But then at the same time, for myself, I personally don't let other people dictate my behavior, in the sense that I will still say hi to people in spite of that. But I'll recognize that was you, and that's a you thing, not a me thing.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's because I talk a lot of things in the book, like Rob said, that is unpopular. And it's because I think we need to call each other on our shit, right? And I'm never going to agree with a woman when they say Black men do not protect us. I just am now, because I'm surrounded by Black men who either have protected or truly want to protect Black women. But Rob hit on that word, which is vulnerability, right? And, I make a comment in the book about the strong Black woman fallacy, and how being a strong Black woman was supposed to be our superpower, but it's now become our kryptonite. Because when you put out that aura of strength, you're actually trying to repel anything else that comes towards you. So vulnerability, and I've been guilty of it. The thing about my book is I use my story as the narrative for the book. I've been guilty of equating vulnerability with weakness. And you can't be strong and weak at the same time, right? So you choose strength, because strength gets you through everything that life throws at you as a woman, and then as a Black woman, and then for me as an immigrant Black woman. So You choose the cape of strength. But while you're choosing the cape of strength, what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, "What anything that doesn't suit this narrative, remove it from me, dear Jesus." And you need to actually be vulnerable. You need to, there is a sense of, if I don't need him, what is he here for? Because part of, Rob talks a lot on the show, and he can talk for himself, but, it is in the man's DNA to want to protect the woman. It is in his DNA naturally to want to protect me, but if I don't give him the opportunity, he's like, "Well, I don't need her. I'm going to move on to someone who does."
Right. That knight in shining armor complex. It's in us.
It's in us. And I think we don't get enough credit for it a lot of the times because we, like you said, in a lot of cases, Black men have let other people's behavior dictate our, we've kind of, now I think the silence, silence can be construed in two different ways. Silence, and that's one thing I had an uncle tell me, especially in relationships, like when you're in a argument, for lack of a better word, with a woman, if you're silent, she equates your silence with in your head, you're saying, "She's right. That's why I don't have anything to say. That's why I'm sitting here quiet, because she's right." Now, I'm sure, Martin, that's probably not what that guy's thinking. He's keeping his mouth quiet because he doesn't want to go nuclear. You know what I mean? And he's just going to bite his tongue and let her have her things because there's still affection and care there. So he's like, "Look, if I just start running my mouth the way you're running yours, we'll never make it through this.
We're not going to make any progress.
We're not going to make it through this. So I'm going to just sit here and be silent and quiet and let you just work through your stuff." So in the community, I think the silence of Black men is honestly from a lack of not wanting no smoke. Like, the Black man's main adversary, unfortunately, is Black women. And and we can debate that, you can disagree with that, but I think there's a lot of evidence out there in society that Black men struggle, fight just for the room to be them. Now, this is not regardless of race. In any relationship, if I expect her to allow me to be me, shouldn't I give her the same thing?
Yes.
But a lot of times, it's that this is me, accept me,
But change you.
but here's a list of things I need you to fix.
Yes.
And many women will enter into a relationship under that kind of assumption, and it just leaves the guy feeling like just not very powerful. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's when the guy starts to be like, "Do I really want to be in this? What do I do?" It starts to become a situation because you're like, "I have feelings for this woman, I care for this woman, but I really don't like the way she treats me." And I think almost every guy can relate to that on a certain level.
And if you take that on scale, like if you take that now and you scale that is the feeling that's happening. And so again, I have to caution Black women that we have to be very careful about the narratives that we're putting out there about Black men, especially when they are so damaging to us as a community and to us as a family. And that's like we've come away from this family community dynamic. I don't know if we have community anymore. People would like to think that we do, but when you're in a community, you protect everyone in that community. That is the whole point of the community, right? The chief protects everyone that's underneath him. So we're actually not protecting each other. So it's not Black women, Black men are not protecting. We're not doing that either. And I talk about it again on the show. I don't know if you can see it here, but Rob's 6'9", right? And when we go out in the world together, I'm a bit of a buffer for him. So it's, "Oh my God, you guys are such a beautiful couple, and he's so tall, and did he play basketball?" And there's this, narrative that's really, really nice and really, really sweet. Remove me out of the equation, and he's just hanging out with his other fairly tall friends, as Black men walking around in this world.
Scary
That's
Black men.
not what they're seeing.
Right.
They don't see the handsome, charming men. They see a big Black threat. And so he is figuratively getting lashed out there in the world, lashed
Right.
and lashed and lashed. When he
Before he
enters
opens his mouth, he hasn't even done anything, just
anything,
existing.
just
Right.
exactly, his very existence is threatening to those who see him as a threat, right? So he goes through that day in and for hours at a time, and then he walks through that door.
Mm-hmm.
It is my job to ensure that what he feels in our home is safety and security and love and support and respect. That lovely word that we've so forgotten. He needs to feel all of that. If he walks through this door and I am just telling him everything that he is not, he might as well go back out there into the rest of the world. Because that's what the world is doing.
He's getting assailed out there anyways. Yeah. And kind of going back a little bit to a conversation we had about the love languages and loving in the way that you feel love instead of loving the way you want to be loved. I think that kind of comes into this conversation about that sense of protection as well, right? So in those situations where a Black woman may say, I don't feel protected by Black men, generally speaking, the man can be doing the protecting and be at that center and do those things, but if he's doing it in a way and expressing that in a way that she doesn't see or feel it, it's like he's not doing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's something to be said, not for giving lip service or not patronizing, but doing it in visible, tangible ways so that the other person can experience it. So I can appreciate if someone's experience is they're saying, I feel like I'm not being protected by Black men. If you experience that and that's your feeling, I can't say your feeling is wrong. But when you lash out and say that men are not doing this, and now, Rob, speak on behalf of every Black man on the planet, where are you?
I am
That's
all
like,
for my Black queens. I am all for protection of you, but you gotta help us with that. You know, that's how I just look at it. She doesn't make it difficult for me to be there for her. It's not like we don't do a lot of that. What's wrong with you? Nothing. And I gotta ask 11 times to try to get her to open her mouth and say what's the problem. We have a really direct conversational style. Our friends have been around, and it's a little off-putting sometimes because it's really direct.
Almost too direct.
It's extremely direct.
Yes.
But it cuts through all of the pretense, you know. It cuts through all the. I find myself, those little slights, we don't experience that as much. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like I can say something the wrong way and she's over there with an attitude now. It's like, no, if I got some shade to throw, it's gonna be like, wow, like right at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And vice versa. You know what I'm saying? But that's
fine, you know, in the sense of, and that's what I called what are the rules of engagement. In every battle, there are rules of engagement, right?
Yeah.
So you can do this, and this is fair game, but that's a low blow. So whatever that level is, if that's a mutually agreed upon level, I can stand on the outside, and you guys can throw fists. And if that's what you guys decide is your rules of engagement, you could throw down as long as you like. But if you guys said we're gonna be nice, and you can't mention so and so's name, and you throw that name in, then those are different rules of engagement that you violated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
I love that. Martin, that was a great way, because when we got into this relationship, we did talk about rules of engagement. A number one primary rule will forever be no disrespect.
Period.
Yes.
Period. Point blank, through words, through actions, through anything. There is absolutely no disrespect. And because the moment we get to that point of feeling disrespected by the other, it's very difficult to come back from that. Like once you kind of cross that line, it's very difficult to kind of go back in time, right? And so, you know, as much as our interactions are very direct, they're still very respectful, because at the end of the day, I love this man and I'm not going to do anything. Again, the rest of the world out those doors are breaking him down. I will not contribute to that. And I made a conscious decision not to contribute to what the rest of the world is already doing to the person I love, right? Yes. He's the protector of our home. He's the king in my life. And I do believe, you know, like we have a very traditional relationship, even though I'm not necessarily a traditional person. But in order for us to work, we have traditional roles. But in doing so, it's allowed me to do the things that make me the happiest, right? And
Yes.
which allows him to do what needs to be done. And, you know, something I started doing with him, talking about love language, is, you know, I know how to love him, but I say to him, how can I love you better? What are the things that you need from me to love you better? I know I'm capable of loving you, but again, just because I think I know how to love him doesn't mean I'm loving him in the way that he wants to be loved.
Right, and that's a scary conversation to have on any level. You know what I mean? Like how we do fitness, how we do Pilates, how we do life, how we talk racism, how we talk whatever. All these conversations become scary at that, or uncomfortable at that moment, because if I'm saying to you, how do I love you better? What I'm doing is opening up to say, this is where you're not reaching the mark. Right. So if I can take it back to a more comfortable conversation, if I have a client that I've been working with for 2 months and they're seeing progress, and I say, well, how are you liking your sessions so far? Is there anything I could do better? Is there something that we haven't done that you said that at the outright that, you know, that we wanted to do that we haven't touched on yet? I'm opening up the conversation where we can get better, but I'm also opening up the conversation where you could tell me where I'm missing the mark. And a lot of times in life, we aren't committed enough to getting better to receive constructive criticism on where we are missing the mark right now. So I can't get better over here without sacrificing the comfort of knowing that I'm good enough. Like if you say, I'm really liking these sessions, but I said that I want to focus on some more stretching and we haven't done any stretching at all, then you're saying your programming is off a little bit and you need to work on your programming. It's like, or you're not prepared enough, or you didn't listen enough. So I have to internalize all those messages without going to, woe is me, I'm not good enough, I suck as a trainer, I'm going to find another career. You know what I mean? Like, woe is me, I'm not a good husband, I'm not a good boyfriend. If I turn it internally like that, then I never get better. That person never gets heard and we never progress.
Yeah.
So when you ask that question, how can I love you better? You better hope that they're like warm, fuzzy answers. I want you to bring me flowers once a week. Done. But if the person says, you don't listen to me and you cut me off every time you have a conversation. No, I don't. Blah, 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 blah. And it just goes like, it can go both ways, right? So we have to open ourselves up to the fact that whatever is going to make us better also might be uncomfortable in that feedback and in that moment. That's a scary conversation to open up. And I wonder how many people actually do that.
Not a lot.
No, definitely not a lot. And I can tell you, just to pivot a little bit, my experience in, I've got a lot of experience in corporate America. On average, people can't take feedback, much less legitimate criticism. And I think one thing you touched on, Martin, was the commitment to getting better.
Yes.
I think so many people, especially Americans, I think we are the absolute worst in this context because we're the greatest country in the world. So we don't have to do anything better.
We don't have to get better.
We don't have to get better. We just are cool right where we are. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm great. What are you talking about? I'm 10.
Yeah.
No, everyone else is going to pull you at a 4. So there's a lot of room for improvement. But if that person doesn't see that room for improvement, it's not going to get done. So what you touched on is really that commitment to improvement. And I would say that's probably one of the most important things for a successful relationship is if I want to get better and she's cool with where she's at, we're unequally yoked.
Yes. Dropping Bible terms.
Right? Well, and it's so funny. I'm gonna take it back to my book. So I'm gonna put my book sideways, and I'm gonna tell you that this book started out as 55,000 words. It was like over 300 pages. My editor, I don't know if she's on right now, but she took a black mark to my book and went,
redacted.
I would get it back and I'd be like, clutch my pearls. What the hell? But you know what? It made for a better read and a better book. And he was there for the process. No part of me was like, oh my God, I hate her for everything she's done. She's trying to ruin me. She's trying, because when we started deconstructing and reconstructing the book and putting the pieces and turning them around. It was so much like you're reading it. He's read it like he read it when it was the big Gone with the Wind manual, and reading it now he's like, wow, babe, what a better book. But had I said to her, do not send back my book with all of these, I mean, whole chapters were gone. Like there was just, again, this was 355,000 words.
You can't tell it didn't hurt your soul, like to see. Like,
you know what? The funny thing is, it didn't, because I trusted her. And that's
there
important.
You go.
I trusted her that she had my best interests at heart and she wanted me to put out the best product possible.
Thank you. Yes. When you open with, I'm committed to being better, you are completely open to whatever criticism comes at you. You are ready to apologize. I've apologized to my children on things where you grow up West Indian home. You don't give nothing to your kids, right?
No.
You barely respect them as human beings until they reach of age. So in a sense of saying, I'm sorry to my son because of X, Y, and Z, because you're starting with that place of being like, I'm trying to be better every day. So if I missed the mark here, I apologize. If you experience it this way, I apologize. That wasn't my intent. But that was your experience, so I'm sorry.
And you know what you did with that? You empowered your son to feel the same way. Like, wow, I never expected Dad to do that. I want to be better too. You're leading by example with that. You know what I mean? And that's the only leadership style that works to me is you get that, do as I say, not as I do. I grew up under that. And it was just hypocritical. It was like, no, this is whack. Like, y'all do whatever y'all want to do, and you want to hit the kids with all of these rules. And I think that's kind of what happened with society. That's why we have all these wild children running around, because the generation before them pretty much failed them as far as showing them how to get down, like showing them the way, like showing them this is how you operate.
Right.
Our grandparents, the great-grandparents, they didn't do that. They worked hard. They had work ethic. They busted their tails for better lives for us. And then we took that position, and I don't know, like, I think there's a lot of factors to it, but that's something that definitely should be looked at closer.
One of the
challenges our communities have.
Yeah, I know. I think one of the main factors, I've spoken on this in the past, is when you talk about mentoring. I think that generation that do as I say, not as I do generation was a mentorless generation. They didn't have people that said, come, let me lock arms with you. Let me show you how I'm doing this. I love you. You're doing a great job. It's just like head down, grind it out, make your money, provide for your home. You're a good husband because you're paying the mortgage generation. Type thing, right? Like, so mental health, exactly as Jess is saying right here, there's so much mental illness that has never been addressed in families. That's a whole thing too. Like those generations, there's family shame around mental wellness and health. Like, I mean, like, it's just like there's shame to that. Like, let's just put them over here. Let's just, you know what I mean? Like all those different things. Like you can look back to those generations. Like there was no airspace for any of those things to, for people to address it, to normalize it, to, to have conversation around it. And none of those things happen en masse, right? So.
Well, I grew up in a world where you don't go to therapy, you go to church, right? What are you talking about? You're not, because, growing up, I'm 41 years old, there was this idea that it was a white man with a pen judging you, and you're not going to bring your problems to a white man with a pen judging you. And so, you're supposed to go to the pastor, you're supposed to go to the Lord, you're supposed to pray on it. But I got to the point and said, my prayers ain't going no further than the ceiling. So clearly God ain't hearing me. So I needed some therapy, right? And I talk in the book about normalizing therapy as I'm speaking specific to Black women, but as Black people as a whole, we need to normalize therapy because we suffer from PTSD, and that PTSD is contributing to the lack of community that we have, because there's all of this infighting. And you experienced it actually at that meeting. You weren't able to get probably things done in that meeting because the infighting started, right? When you're infighting, you don't get to tackle the things that are important to move
The real
forward.
things.
There's
Right.
no progression. There's regression. And I look at our community, and there's so much regression that's happening. And, you know, part of growing up in Jamaica that I loved was when you walk down the streets and you're passing people, as long as somebody was on the veranda, you're saying good morning. It doesn't matter if you walk by 10 times. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Because if you didn't dare say it and your grandmother or somebody heard that you passed Mrs. Jackson and you didn't say good morning, you're getting hell for it. So you got into this place, you knew who your neighbors were, you knew all of that. You felt a sense of responsibility to the people who surrounded you, and they the same for you. And I think we need to go back to feeling a sense of responsibility. I feel a sense of responsibility for anybody that walks through our door. Yeah. And I do so by making sure any of his friends who come through this door feel exactly how I make him feel when he walks through that door. Right? And there are things that I do to make them feel comfortable, where a lot of women now are taking traditional things that women do and turning them into bad things, and saying that a woman serving a man is a slave, and all of these, which is very, very problematic, right? But my thing is, anybody who walks through my door should feel warm and comforted. So if he's got 3 friends here and I've made dinner, I'm serving all 3 of them and I'm giving them their plate. Like, I'm doing those things, and it doesn't make me less of a woman. I think we need to, exactly, I think we need to go back into our feminine energy and realize femininity is such a powerful thing. But we keep going through this, we gotta be a strong Black woman. We're coming in with this mask of masculinity that is not at all attractive. And it actually doesn't serve our purposes, because you can only sustain that for so long. And when you bring that from the corporate world, which if that works for you in the corporate world, that's fine, but you cannot bring that home. You cannot bring that around your children. You cannot bring that around your peer groups. It's actually kind of repelling. And so if you're saying Black men aren't protecting you, it's again because you're actually repelling them.
We can let that just sit in the air for a moment. There's a topic that you put in right at the, like, as I said, I'm working through the books. I'm right at the beginning of the book here. Can you share the story about where your white colleague, you had to apologize to her for making her feel like she was a racist?
And let's be clear, she never got that apology. So what happened was, I was working with my colleague on an event. We'd gone to one meeting. The meeting didn't go as well. They asked me back to a meeting. I went to that meeting. I soothed everything over. Everything was good to go, systems in place. And while I was there, they asked me to speak at a Women's Day event. Lot of honor for me, because it was in my old neighborhood that I had grown up. So I go back to the office to explain to her that, you know, all things go. And by the way, they asked me to speak at a Women's Day event. And I want to set the stage for you. I'm at the door of her office. The door is open, and behind us we have kind of like a bullpen area where other people are sitting. And she looked at me and says, "You know, they only asked you to do that because you're Black, right?" I'm sorry. When are people handing out honors to Black women, right? Like, that, you know, there are no handouts for Black girls. So I remember in that moment, and I describe it in the book, what I thought in my head, but what I actually did was kind of walk away. And because I listen, you can't put beating a white woman's ass on your resume. So that wasn't where I was going to go with that. But I had to go to my therapist and I had to unpack it. By the time it came around that I unpacked it, and then I had gone to HR and, you know, our upper management, and I explained the comment, she acknowledged that she had said it was a joke, started to cry in the meeting. And then I was told subsequently that I needed to apologize to her because she was crying, and it was very clear that I had misinterpreted her comments, and basically implying or insinuating that she was a racist was wrong on my part. And so it was time for me to apologize. Let's just say that apology never happened, and that is that.
And it happens a lot.
Comments.
I mean,
That
it
no,
happens a lot.
sorry, Rob, you're cutting out a little bit there.
Oh no, I think that situations similar to that, situations around that happen a lot.
A lot.
A lot. It's if the role was reversed, it would not have played out that way. And I don't think there's very many people that would discount that. If something offensive was said to the white girl and she decided to bring it and Toshiba breaks down and crying and no, I was joking. I obviously don't mean that. I can't even believe that you would think that about me. It doesn't play out that way. We don't. It is what it is.
It is.
Black people do not get to walk through life assuming they're going to get the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
It's just what it is. You have to assume you got to get it right the first time because you might not get that second opportunity to get it right. And that's very different from how it should feel for anyone.
Yes. And Rob, I've said this in the past, and I explain this to my kids too, and you may disagree or may think it's wrong, but like I walk through life with the assumption that people label me as guilty until I'm innocent.
Yes.
As opposed to innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I agree. You could, no matter how, especially right now, no matter how well you've lived your life, 40 plus years of being a stand-up guy.
Yes.
One accusation can erode all of that.
All
an accusation, not even an actual conviction, not even an actual a certitude. No, you did this. You did this.
Yes.
So just the implication that you did something can completely derail your life.
Right.
And as a black man, it's kind of disheartening because it gives you it's a kind of an anxiety of, on one hand, when we're growing up, we're told, oh, humans aren't perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do that. But then you get into adulthood and you feel that you don't get that same benefit. It's that your mistakes are amplified. Your victories are trivialized. Like, I'm a 6'9" black man. In the corporate space, I feel like I have to shrink myself to make other people feel more comfortable around. And I think that's not how it's supposed to be. So when people say, oh, you have this job, you work at this company, you have this position, you make this money, there's a cost to that.
Yes.
And it's not always great. Now I've made some changes to that. I'm in a different situation, different company, fresh slate, clean slate. So I'm very excited that may not be the case, but I'd be lying if I said I was going into it assuming that it would be different, because 45 years of life has not provided me any other experience. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes. The challenge for us as black men is to not live paralyzed by that truth.
Yes.
Right? Like, so even in saying that I walk through this world knowing I'm guilty until I'm proven innocent, I don't walk around with a chip on my shoulder. I walk around trying to live a life of integrity so that in those situations where I might be accused of something, that person has a conflict. They now have this conflict because it's like, that's not consistent with Martin's character.
Yes.
What do I do with this?
Yes.
If you live your life with integrity, when those accusations come, there should be a conflict with that person because you live in integrity. So I'm guilty to proven innocent, but now it's like, wait a minute, that's not consistent with his character. What do I do with this information?
Right. And I think in addition to that, as black men, we have to walk through life with the attitude of, I'd rather ask forgiveness than permission, because you'll rarely get permission to do anything. If I go to my manager with a great idea and say, can I try this? It may or may not come to fruition. My attitude is I'm going to implement that and get it up to where it needs to be. And then I'm going to bring that to you. And if you don't like how I was using my time, you think that was a bad use of resources, you don't see what I was doing. I would rather deal with that than I have this great idea that I want to move on, and your no can just shut me down.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's the whole question of industry and how do we document that and how do we build, all those different things. When all those things are done well, you can't say no because there's integrity in that process.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a interesting lived experience. There's a window for those who are watching. There's a window into the Black man's world. There's a window into the Black woman's world, in different ways. And I love how even in the book, when you say that, like that story that you shared a minute ago, it sounds shocking to some people, but then it is, oh, let me share my story too to some other people, right? I can one up that story, right? Because that's happened to me X amount of time. So I like that you give space to that. I love that, I'm just looking forward to how the book ends, when that's the first like 15 pages that comes out, people. So,
Right?
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, Alex, just reading some of the comments here. Jess was saying earlier, there's so much mental illness. I mentioned that they have such a great relationship. Sometimes love is not enough, but they have figured it out.
I agree with that statement too. Love is not enough, but it'll get you a long way. You know what I mean? I think love and a commitment to get better is enough.
Right. Yeah. I would say liking is enough.
Oh, that part.
Yeah, that's
you know
more
what I'm
important, actually.
All of that.
My wife says it all the time. We talk about that. She's like, okay, yeah, I love you, but I actually like you too. Like, I mean, that's the bonus.
Have you ever experienced someone loving you and not liking you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a difficult situation.
That's a different situation.
Because you can see this person cares for me, but they don't like me. They don't like who I am. I irritate them, it seems like, on a level that's just, I'm just being me. I've been in that circumstances before, and you got to get out that quick because, again, love is very different from like. Like will take you further, though.
And I think what's interesting, because I know we're wrapping up, empowering somebody to be them in a relationship is the most dynamic thing. And I think that's what and so thank you for the person who said that. What we've done is allowed each other to be as authentically us as possible. And, I said to my girlfriend, if the person who loves me the most, allows me to be authentic in this relationship, the rest of the world's going to get what the rest of the world gets. Because you feel an empowerment in your situation. So if you're in a space in your most romantic relationship where you have to kind of tiptoe around your partner, imagine what you do outside in the rest of the world. Right. There is strength in the dynamic of saying, like, he gets to be him, like raw, unadulterated, and Lord, I got a lot to deal with. but he has the same with me, but that's how people think, like, our conversation is what it is because we allow each other that space. There's no tiptoeing around, and I like him as a human being. I tell him there's some days you irritate the hell out of me, but I still like you. And I said to him, no matter what, I choose you every day. Yeah. Every day in this relationship, I recommit to you. People think that they get into something and all of a sudden it's hunky-dory. Nobody really just woke up one day 15 years later and didn't love their partners because they stopped choosing them. I recommit to him every morning when I wake up. I'm recommitting and I'm saying, I'm choosing you today. And for some people that might be like, what the heck? But that works for us.
Yeah, it does.
Right. Yeah. That's why I crack on people who renew their vows every 10 years or 15 years. I'm like, you got to renew those daily. Like, in some sense, there's a notion of renewing them daily.
Every day.
What do you do between now and then, right? Like, yeah, let's
15 years of growing apart and then let's renew our vows. You know what I mean? Like,
doesn't work. So that's what I would suggest to couples to make it work. And I know he's got a run for a bit to go on his line, but
we're at 56. I
appreciate he's gonna come back. But that's what I would recommend to anybody. If again to in order for this world to get better, the Black family has to be better. And we have to be choosing Black families, right? Like this whole I'm single, I want to be single, and all of whatever, I don't need no man rally that people are doing, that actually is degrading the Black family. It's destroying the Black family. And you actually need, if we want to get better, we need to recommit to family. And your family can look however your family wants to look, but you need to recommit to family. You need to recommit to community. And that's why you're not feeling protected, because you yourself have not committed to what that looks like. There is this idea that you don't like something, you quit, you leave, and it's over because someone's hurt your feelings or whatever the myriad of things where people are ending relationships. But if we don't recommit to rebuilding our community by rebuilding our family, Martina, I just don't think we're going to get much further.
Yep, I agree. So good. Super important. Choose each other every day. Well said. Phil Griffin, last comment here, says it's absolute best when you can be yourself. That's why I don't advise people get married in their 20s. It takes a while to figure that out. Yeah, you know, it's funny. Like I got married in my 20s, divorced and remarried a few years ago, and there's a sense, generally speaking, of knowing yourself. And I don't think it's a question of a numerical age as much as a sense of maturity, because you can mature to a point where you understand who you are. And that could happen in your 20s, or you could be in your 40s and not know yourself, and you're not ready to get married at 45. So the number isn't as important as the maturity and the awareness of who you are, and bringing a whole person to the relationship. Like, you don't complete me, I'm complete, and we complement one another. Those are two different conversations. So I don't know if it's a number, because Phil, I understand what you're saying there, but I don't know if it's a number as much as that the place of maturity in terms of your age and experience that makes a difference. Because I'm sure you could cross paths with someone in their 20s, sniff it out and be like, okay, you're ready. Or someone in their 50s and be like, you need to wait 2 more years, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, that's good stuff. Anyway, you slice it. That's some good stuff. People, please grab this book. Toshiba, can you put in the comment section your website so people can
sorry, let me do that right now. So it's iamtoshiba.com, and sorry, I'm like right up on the screen. But if you go to my website, iamtoshiba.com, you can find links to purchase this book and the other 6 book series I have. You can also see clips from my talk show, Not Your Typical Girl Talk. You can do all of that. So go to the website. It kind of has everything in there. And again, I'm a self-published author, so every book matters. I don't have any backing behind me. I did this all myself. And if anybody has any questions about being an author, becoming self-published, I'd be happy to answer those as well. Again, go on my website and you can send me an email.
Absolutely. We talked last Wednesday. I ordered this in our conversation and it came by Friday. So
awesome. Good job, Amazon.
Cool. There you go. And also, Toshiba, I need to say too, like, you're not that typical girl podcast. I love what you're doing there, and I really appreciate bringing me into your space and in your world, because I know that with that talk, I mean, pro-Black women, all these different things, to be able to broaden the conversation and to talk, to bring, Rob into the conversation, all those different things. I really appreciate it because it makes it more palatable. It helps us to understand your world. And so I appreciate that. It'd be easy for you to stay in that strict silo, and instead you broaden the conversation. And it's been a joy bringing you into my world, my core conversations world. And so thank you so much. I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations with you.
And I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that's commenting. And, I'm just going to say this. I have a hope for us in our community. I have not given up on Black men, and I know that Rob hasn't given up on Black women. We have a hope. We see so much that can happen, but it's really time that we start changing the narrative, because when you change your words, you change your mindset, and people don't realize how powerful words are, and we need to really think about the narrative that we're putting out there. So that's why I wrote the book.
There you go.
My last plug.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us as well. Thank you for all the input and the interaction. I love the comments that come out when Toshiba's on. So this has been fun as always. Good stuff. All right. Take care. See ya.
Have a good one. Bye.